Okay, today we're going to show you how to sharpen negative rake scrapers. When these tools are sharpened properly, they'll change the way you turn. There's several different ways of sharpening it. I'm going to start off with the simple way. My friend Eric is going to take it a step or two farther.
I'm Eric Lofstrom, and I'm here to help show some different applications of the negative rake scraper, some different styles of sharpening it, so that you can have success at the lathe, regardless of what materials you're turning with it. The difference between a negative rake scraper and a standard scraper.
Negative rake scraper has a bevel on the top. The regular scraper has a flat top. That's the visual difference. The actual difference is the negative rake part changes the angle of the tool. Makes it very user-friendly, very catch resistant. It changes the tool. The tool is a completely different tool when it's negative rake versus just a regular scraper.
So the geometry is different, but also how it behaves is totally different.
It behaves completely different. It's docile and easy to use.
With the Boxmaster Tools, why the double end?
I think it's an exceptional value. You have a different tool on the other end. I originally wanted them to just be a long tool that would last me a long time. I did the second end originally to have an example of what the tool is supposed to look like, not even realizing in the beginning that that's a whole nother tool.
So you can get 2 for 1.
It's a 2-for-1 deal. Yeah, it just made sense.
Jimmie, what material is Boxmaster Tools made of?
These tools are made with American-made steel, M2 high-speed steel, and they have a very high-tech heat treating process. We live in the Pacific Northwest near Boeing, so the aerospace industry has the finest heat treating facilities in the nation.
And that's where they're heat treated.
That is where they're heat treated.
A little bit, but want to maybe talk about how the heat treating is really what makes the steel amazing. Right? I mean, the steel is amazing, but the heat treating takes it kind of to the next level.
The heat treating takes it to a totally different level.
Yeah.
This is not your standard M2 high-speed steel that has a bad name sometimes. It's a proprietary process, and it's very high-tech, and it works very well.
Why didn't you make these scrapers out of a different material? Well, you can change the profile.
You can change the profile.
And you can sharpen them in a lot of different ways.
You can, and you can get them sharper.
Right? Yeah, so you can change profile because you can change it to whatever you want it to be.
You absolutely can.
And then you can sharpen it in a lot of different ways. It's not just one way to sharpen.
No, it's very versatile. The versatility it's hard to beat the versatility.
Yeah, I'll do that again. You mentioned a negative rake scraper, and with this negative rake on the top of the tool and the relief angle on the front, which we typically call a bevel, what are the angles that you typically use for the top and the front?
The top angle usually is about 20 to 25 degrees. If you're off a few degrees, it's not a critical thing.
So that one. Okay.
It is
and
that
what about
angle.
the front?
The bottom angle is about 70 to 75 degrees.
Okay. And so between the two, you have almost a 90-degree angle.
Almost.
Not quite. It's slightly under that, right?
It is.
Okay. Got it. So Jimmie, I have one of your tools right here with a really nice negative rake on the top, and the front bevel or the front angle that we have to grind as well. How do you go about setting up a platform at the grinder to be able to sharpen or grind that top bevel?
If you have a new tool, it's already got a pretty long bevel. You can take the tool and you can adjust the platform until the bevel mates to the wheel. Now, if this bevel's all worn away, we've got these nifty little setup gauges. Set that on your platform, and when the angle touches the wheel, there you are. And then same setup every time. You don't have to keep your platform the same.
So then I also noticed that you have an auxiliary platform that you added on top of the one-way for some safety features. Can you explain to us what that gives you as far as safety?
Absolutely. Without the platform, you do not have these two wings on each side, so you would be awful close to the edge. This way, you can come up on the wheel like so.
So it comes all the way up on this wing on the side?
It can come up like this, exactly. And it just gives you a better safety feature because you can come up like this. And then the same with the other side.
So the other profile.
Exactly. It's much safer than being on the very corner of the little platform.
Okay. So you covered this platform, and that's the top negative rake here, which is the longer of the two bevels when you buy the tool brand new. For the face or this relief angle, the ground section on the front of the tool, we have a totally different grinder platform setup. Is that right?
We do.
Okay, let's take a look at that one. The negative rake on the top takes this platform over here, and I notice you have another platform that's set up, and I'm assuming that's for the front bevel or that relief angle on the front of the tool. Tell us about that.
Okay, well, I like to sharpen mine upside down because the grinder wheel comes this way, so I think it drags a better burr on there. This is an idea I got from you right here. This is the same size as a business card, so I have the little platform. You can adjust it. That sets your angle. The reason that there's an auxiliary block on there instead of the platform itself is because this gets you up to the center of the wheel. I like doing it that way because it's very easy, it's very forgiving. All I have to do is hold a finger on the tool and I rotate the tool that way for that side. And then I come over to do the other side and I rotate the tool this way.
That's pretty simple.
It's very simple. It's as simple as I could make it.
So what started you doing it upside down? You know, thinking about the negative rake scraper and the bevel on the top or the negative rake, what got you started doing it upside down? Did you always do it upside down with other scrapers as well, or just with a negative rake?
No, I had started with the regular scrapers because I just thought with the wheel going with it upside down, the wheel coming down, it drags out a longer burr. And there are some other people that say that's a good idea. A lot of engineers agreed with that. And for no other reason, with it pointed down like this, I have constant contact to the wheel. That just makes it really, really simple for me to do. So that's why I do it. I try and make stuff as simple as I can. If you're uncomfortable with doing the upside down thing, you can use a regular platform and do it right side up. It's the same gauge, it does all three, same deal. You put the gauge against there, you adjust it up against your wheel, and you're good. And this is probably how you're used to sharpening your tools, the same deal. You put your down, you go back and forth.
So this would be with the grinder burr facing up.
The burr would be facing up. And it just never made sense to me how you could get a burr coming up with the wheel going down.
But you can, it's just a smaller burr typically.
You can,
That's what
you can.
Okay.
I like the more aggressive burr from the upside down. So that's how I use the tool 80 to 85% of the time off the grinder. But there's that other percent of the time, especially when you're using a tricky exotic wood or you're having a really curly wood problem that's raising a big fuzz. That's when you do what you do. You take, and I'll let you explain it because you're the one that taught me.
So there are some times where you might want to tune the burr a little bit differently than the grinder. Grinder's a great way to keep that tool in use and to be able to use it for most of your applications. But if you're turning with acrylic, if you're turning with a really dense exotic wood like blackwood, I have a piece of blackwood and a piece of acrylic right here, so blackwood or acrylic, you might want to hone the burr or change the burr structure on the negative rake scraper so it behaves a little bit better with those materials. If I were to take this example of a negative rake scraper, and this is a model that I use for teaching, and we look at the negative rake on the top and then the relief bevel across the front, and we draw it up on the board so I can describe what's happening at this edge off the grinder, what's happening at the edge if I hone the burr, and what's happening at the edge if I hook the edge. So here's a negative rake scraper. Just in cross section. Negative rake is here, relief bevel, and it may be all the way out like this, just to keep it simple with those two. On Boxmaster Tools and any tool that I have, I also ease this corner right there so that isn't in the way, so it softens it. Is that right, Jimmie?
Exactly,
Yeah.
And it looks pretty.
Yeah, it looks really nice. It behaves a little bit better as well. So right here is the edge. And if we look at the edge and a little bit closer, off the grinder, it almost looks like steel wool, but it's ribbons of steel from the grind. And there might even be some small melted balls of steel that are there, little beads of steel and that kind of stuff. And it slices the wood, but it also scrapes the wood a little bit, and it'll give a little bit of a scratch pattern, especially when you're dealing with exotics or with acrylic, and you'll see that scratch pattern. Once this grinder burr breaks off, you end up with an edge that is serrated, so it has little teeth across it, and that's because it's broken off. So in exotics like blackwood or acrylic, you want to hone that burr completely off so that it's a true edge. So when I hone that off, I'm basically erasing it so that it's in line, and I give a nice clean corner to be able to scrape the wood with. There is no raggedness or any debris, metal debris there. It's actually a nice true edge. Let me show you how I do that with my diamond hone. So when I take it from the grinder and I'm honing that burr off, I'm smoothing out that edge and making it nice and true. I'm taking any debris that might fracture off of the edge and leave a jagged edge. And I use a diamond hone. I'm going to use my model here, negative rake on top, relief angle in the front, and a diamond hone. It's just a piece of cardboard to symbolize that. The grinder burr will be on the top, and it actually will be curled up like this on the edge. That's really great for most woods and most applications of the negative rake scraper. But when I want to take it off, I'll just lay the diamond hone here. But I actually changed my position. So the diamond hone is across the top, the negative rake. I put pressure in the middle of that negative rake so that it bridges across from the edge to the heel of the bevel. And I just swipe like this. I just swipe one or two times and it takes the grinder burr right off. What you'll find then is the grinder burr has been polished on this surface, but it's flipped to the front. So now, instead of going this way, the grinder burr is a lot smaller, but it's going forward. That's okay, but if you want to take it up a level and get a finer finish off the tool, take that hone, balance in the middle, anchor your thumb, and just swipe around to be able to take that burr off of the front. Really light pressure. Now that burr is flipped up to the top. You can keep chasing your tail on this if you want to. Okay, just really light, one swipe, it'll flip to the front, one swipe really light, and it's basically ready for use. That's how I tune the scraper when I want to use it in blackwood, cocobolo, ebony, those kind of really dense, hard exotics, but especially in acrylics.
And this sounds complicated and it looks complicated. It's really not. If I can get it, anyone can get it. It's just practice. You'll get amazing results if you try this.
So let me grab the scraper that you had earlier. It's in your hand. And I'm going to actually use a diamond hone just to show how little this actually requires. So this is a burr that's raised on, what grit wheel were you using, the coarsest over there?
An 80 grit wheel, so it's a really ragged burr.
Okay, so there's a burr on the top and I can actually feel it with my fingernail. It'll hang up at the edge before it skips off. So I'm using 1000 grit. This is a diamond hone. This happens to be a trend brand, but DMT works really well as well. And this is 1000 grit. And I'm gonna balance that hollow grind on the top, the negative rake. Just really light pressure. You can hear it maybe. Okay, and now the burr is flipped to the front. It's no longer on the top of the tool. That just took two really light swipes. It's on the front of the tool. So taking the hone, finding that hollow grind, I can feel it, and I'm just gonna swipe just like that, and now it's flipped up onto the top. Really light pressure. That's all it takes and I'm ready to go. Pretty simple.
It really is.
It takes practice, but it's pretty simple.
It's not as hard as it looks.
So another application that I might use past this, now that this is a polished edge, is raising a hook on it. And people will ask, well, why would you want a hook on it? Why wouldn't you just use the grinder burr that's on it? And a hook actually takes advantage of the same cutting mechanics as a cabinet scraper would for a flat woodworker, somebody who's making furniture. So let's take the same exact angle, we'll pretend it's the same exact angle, and we're going to be pushing the steel up. So it's actually going to make a hook. I'm exaggerating here, but it's going to make a hook, something like this. This hook, you can make it really small, or you can make it really tall And the hook will actually last longer than the grinder burr. The hook, you're deforming that edge and pushing it up. You're raising a really smooth edge across there, and you get a really clean cut. If you try and use a hook in exotics or acrylic, wow, it'll be really grabby, way too aggressive. But in softer woods or really even grained woods, even eastern maple or hard maple, it works beautifully in that. So how do I do that? Well, taking my model again and using a rod, I actually use a carbide rod for this. I'll match the angle of the relief angle in the front, and then I'll go up by about 2 to 3 degrees, and I'll just swipe it across the surface. What I'm doing is I'm pushing that metal up. So by holding it to match and then go 2 to 3 degrees, I'm pushing that metal up. I'm hitting that edge and pushing it up. So again, about 2 to 3 degrees. I'm going to find the spot all the way around where the edge begins, and I'm just going to swipe all the way across like this. So again, match that angle, go up a few degrees, swipe across the front. It doesn't take that much pressure as long as you have a small diameter rod that's burnishing. Let me show you it actually with the scraper and the size rod that I use. So if I were to take this same radius negative rake scraper that we just polished the edge on, I honed it so that the grinder burr is off of it. I take my burnishing rod, I'm going to find that hollow grind, and even though it's short, it's less than 1/8 of an inch, I can still feel it. My thumb is right here so I don't slip off. I'm going to find it, go up a few degrees, and one time around, find it again, second time around. Now there's a hook on the top here that will hang up with my fingernail, and that will actually slice the wood, much like a cabinet scraper.
Okay, now we're going to make some shavings. Now I'm going to pretend like I've been using this tool for a while. I will show you how fast and easy it is to sharpen. For one, when you got the tool handle in here, it's kind of awkward. It's a whole lot easier if you take the tool out of the handle. And this is how simple it is. Now you have a lightweight tool. Put it on the platform. Take a finger. That's just to keep it from rolling or rocking. And literally, that's all it takes to sharpen the tool. Now you put the tool back in the handle, and we'll show you the shavings that this thing makes.
We went from the grinder, and then we created the burr off the grinder. I'm curious how this behaves in this eastern maple. Like, I turn a lot of eastern maple, and I really like the negative rake scrapers for that. How do you use it at the lathe?
Well, let me show you. First off, safety first, eye protection. And, these things really cut. You want to have a nice balanced position. They cut.
So that was more of a roughing cut, I'm guessing.
That was very rough.
Yeah, like so pretty fast, lots of stock removal. So how do you know how do you know when you need to take the tool back to the grinder to put an edge back on it?
Your shavings aren't going to look quite like this.
Okay. Is there anything in how it feels when you're using it that tells you?
You can feel a little bit more resistance. It's not quite as smooth, but it's so simple to redo. I mean, this is it.
And
that's it.
And it's ready to go.
That's it. Now we'll make a little bit refining cuts. Balance yourself.
And the grinder hasn't even stopped turning while you did that too. That's pretty impressive.
Absolutely no tear out.
Super smooth. So I noticed with the negative rake, and this is something I really use with the negative rake as well, but that your tool handle is completely parallel to the bed of the lathe. Do you have to lift the handle up like you do a traditional scraper?
You absolutely do not, because that's what makes it so beautiful when you're doing boxes and you're inside the container. You don't have to be up like this where it's all weird. You remain flat.
So you can go deeper in.
You can go a lot deeper.
It still behaves the exact same.
It does.
Awesome. What happens if you drop the handle a little bit? Does it get grabby on you, or is it pretty forgiving?
It does not. Let me show you. See? Even, you can't do that with a flat scraper.
You're dropping the handle down and wow. It's pretty sweet.
Very docile tool. Very easy to use. Anyone can do it.
So raising a hook on the tool, I'm going to put the face shield on here, and raising a hook on the tool, I just took the tool straight from Jimmie's last cut on the end. It's really amazing how well it works. And I'm just going to take that grinder burr off of the top. I'll use 1,000 grit, just really quick. Once, twice, face just to refine it. Once, just like that, just on the top one more time. And then I'll switch to the carbide rod or the burnishing tool. Again, up 2 to 3 degrees, swipe once, up 2 to 3 degrees, swipe a second time, and it's ready to go. So the grinder burr does a really great job of scraping. The hook will last longer, and it's a smoother edge. It's not serrated, it's already polished. So let's just kind of take a look and see what the tool does with that. Now if I get a little bit too aggressive, I can get some vibration, but you see the shaving is a little bit different than the other one before, just a slight amount, because it's not a serrated edge.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the surface that you get off of it is amazing. I mean, really, really clean cut. The nice thing is that this burr, I can hog a lot off. I can be really aggressive with it, but then I can do the finishing cuts without having to return to the grinder every time. So the hook lasts a lot longer. I've been told that, you know, raising a hook on a scraper, just a regular scraper, lasts 10, 15 times longer than a grinder burr. Takes a little bit of practice to learn how to do it, but it doesn't take long to do it. Once that hook has failed, or it's no longer cutting and slicing the wood like I want it to, then I just take it over to the grinder, just like Jimmie was doing a little bit earlier, and then raise another hook on it. Just preserves the steel a little bit longer. Let's take a look at no grinder burr and no hook and see how it behaves in this material. And then we'll switch over to some other material as well. So I'll take the 1,000 grit, take the hook right off the top. Just to see, take the hook off the front, because I just flipped it over, take it off the top one more time. We'll just see without any grinder burr and no hook on it at all, just to see how it behaves.
And this stuff's really not as hard to do as it looks.
You can see the shaving isn't quite as wide, It's a little bit more wrinkled than the ones that I was making with the hook. The surface is just slightly blush, but it's still scraping beautifully because it's a nice clean edge. So let's take a look in some other materials that you might turn for boxes, right?
Let's do it.
Blackwood and acrylic, those two are some of our favorites as well. So we'll switch out the blank on the lathe, get a chance to see how it behaves in blackwood. So negative rake scraper on end grain of blackwood and side grain of blackwood. Let's see what it looks like with the grinder burr.
I'll show
Just out
you.
of curiosity.
Yeah, you'll see here.
Pretty aggressive.
Fairly aggressive cut. I could really hog it and get a bunch of tear out if I needed to.
What does it look like on the side grain? Like all the grains running.
Yeah, let's
spindle
show you.
orientation. What does that look like? Just switching ends, you still have a grinder burr on the
Yeah, I'm
other
going to
end.
come this way just so I don't have to come all the way over here and turn like that, so I can just use the tool this way.
Okay.
Another benefit of having one on the other end.
It looks pretty good, but there's some torn spots, aren't there?
There
some rough
is.
spots right in here. And you could hear it too.
And it's because it's the side grain, not the end grain.
Yeah. What does it look like when that grinder burr is honed off? When it's
So
just a true edge, no hook raised, just a true edge on it.
Let's
I
show
know
you here.
We have another tool blank that's already prepared that way. It sounded a little bit different.
It's totally different cut.
Yeah? Ooh,
I
man.
mean,
That's pretty sweet.
it's very smooth. That's a 600 grit.
What about side grain? I know it didn't take the burr
Yeah, you're gonna
off
have
the side,
to-
but I'll do it real quick. And okay, so it's that. Yeah, that definitely has a burr on it. Okay. There you go, man. You ready?
Okay.
It's interesting. From where I'm standing, you can see it start to shine a little bit.
You can.
It's cleaner scrape. And
It wasn't shiny like this before. We have a little spot here where the grain changes direction, but this is
yeah, really nice.
phenomenal.
Really nice.
This is 400 grit right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to use a little bigger tool. It's the same thing as a smaller tool. It's just a little heft. He's going to take the burr off on this. We'll show you what a bigger tool cuts like.
I'll take it off on both sides just so it's same on both sides for you.
Bigger ones actually looks easier to do.
It's way easier to feel that hollow grind. Yeah, absolutely. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
You can see a shine on it.
Yeah. Nice.
see what it does on the grain. Oh. It's pretty smooth.
Pretty smooth. That's nice. There's even a defect in this wood too. Little crack, so it's jumping over that crack. Yeah, that's really nice. See what the tools do on acrylic.
Okay, yeah, let's try it.
Jimmie just showed on blackwood and looking and seeing how the shavings come off and the surface quality of blackwood with no hook and no burr from the grinder, so just honed off. I'm going to use the same treatment on this negative rake scraper with no hook and no burr. I'm using it on clear acrylic. So this one's been glued to a eastern maple or hard maple face grain or waste block.
That's amazing.
As you can see,
That's amazing.
acrylic cuts different than wood because there's no grain structure, no grain pattern. Now let's go for a smooth surface. So you can take really hogging cuts, really aggressive, or you can take a really fine cut that leaves a really nice smooth surface. So let me just play around with a little bit of profiling, kind of some hollowing out.
It's amazing.
So that's for kind of an internal cut. I can cut on the outside as well, and I'll just round over this corner just to kind of show you with a different plane or different surface shape and how it cuts with that. Kind of crazy stuff. One thing you do need to pay attention with acrylics is the shavings don't break. So you need to either interrupt the cut or you need to be careful so it doesn't get wrapped around the spindle and the chuck, because it'll start wrapping all the shavings around it and they won't tend to break, they'll tend to melt. So just a heads up with that. Most people think of acrylics as just being a carbide style tool to use that to cut it. The negative rake scrapers work beautifully. If I had a burr off the grinder or a hook raised off the grinder, it'd be a little bit grabby. I'd want to chunk the wood out and self-feed just a little bit. So it's a little bit too aggressive for something like this. Ironically, you can also turn or machine aluminum or brass or copper on the lathe with these style of tools as well. So thinking about the different styles of material that we've turned, and we've used the negative rake scraper on the grinder burr that Jimmie was showing using the platforms, that negative rake, but with a grinder burr up on it. The second style was honing it off and raising a hook using that burnishing rod. And then third style with no hook and no grinder burr raised on it at all, just a true edge. That was what this and the blackwood, what we used for turning both of those. And they behave slightly differently.
This is a really, really smooth cut.
Yeah, it's really cool. Typically when I cut acrylic and I scrape acrylic with a negative rake scraper, I start sanding, wet sanding with about 1,000 grit or higher. So it takes good tool control, but to be able to control the tool well, you have to have a tool that really behaves docilely or nicely and predictably when you approach whatever material you're turning.
Okay, so we showed you several different ways to sharpen. We showed you several different ways to cut. I hope that this has helped clarify some of the mystery that's always been associated with these tools. You've seen how easy they are to use, very forgiving. A beginner can get beautiful results from this stuff. And if you'd like to contact us or find out any more information, you can look us up on the web at www.boxmastertools.com. Yeah, I hope that this improves your turning. So check back. And thank you for watching. What are we starting at this time?
Right.
Same thing?
Hold on.
Wondering, people kept wondering how to sharpen the other end.
Good. Yeah, you're good. Keep going. Yeah.
I thought about it and all right, now I'm lost again.
You're good.
Now what?
Hold on.
See, I started talking fast
You're good.
again.
You're good. So wrap up with Jimmie.
Yeah, what do I say now?